It's a whole new world we live in.
Pokemon Johto. We are finally out of Wano, and even though this is leading us to the end game, this also feels like a brand new start. This week starts with a brand new crew member. It's not for the Straw Hats though. Germa66 is adding Caesar to the crew, or at least that's what it looks like. Niji looks like he was straight up getting wrecked in that page, by the way. He's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you showed up, Caesar. I was gonna die if you didn't." If this is how bad Niji looks, I can only imagine how bad Yonji looks. Probably dead off screen somewhere, getting kicked by Katakuri. On a serious note though, I want to start calling this the Mads cover story. We know Mads had 4 members: Vegapunk, Judge, Caesar, and Queen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Caesar is joining the Vinsmokes. So that's 2 members down, 2 members reunited. And since Oda has said that he's currently working towards wrapping things up as soon as possible, I think it'd be a good use of this cover story to have Vegapunk show up by the end to meet Caesar and Judge, to have that reunion, because you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone that way. Now, that doesn't mean that I expect a full silhouette reveal for Vegapunk in the cover story. All I'm saying is that we might get to see his feet or something. The chapter starts off with Yonko Luffy suffering the consequences of his actions, beaten up and trapped in a cage. Now, gag aside, the only way it would make sense for this cage to hold Luffy in the first place would be if it was actually made out of sea stone. There's this whole comment from Jinbei jokingly saying that Nami has King's Haki, but at the same time, I think the comment brings up a valid point of discussion. So if you remember, Roger, in his crew, he had 4 Conqueror's Haki users, including himself. So it was Roger, Rayleigh, Odin, and Shanks, right? So that's 4 members total. And so I think that if Luffy's crew is going to surpass Roger's crew, then Luffy has to have at least 5 Conqueror's Haki users in his crew. And so far, only Luffy and Zoro have been confirmed, so that still leaves 3 slots open. Usopp has lied about having Conqueror's Haki twice, so I think he's the safest bet for the 3rd slot. The anime has been dropping hints about Jinbei possibly possessing it as well, especially when you consider the tonality of the scene between him and Big Mom in Whole Cake Island when he's leaving her crew. And so that would give the Straw Hats a total of 4 Conqueror's Haki users, so you would still need 1 more to surpass Roger's crew. Now, as Jinbei is mentioning this, behind him we get to see a barrel. The point here is that Oda knew exactly what he was doing, drawing that barrel there. It's time to place your bets, because after the break we're going to be getting an answer to this. Is the rabbit inside the barrel? Yes or no? Is she inside the sunny? Yes or no? Lock it in. My answer is yes, by the way. If I take the L next chapter, I take the L. But I do think that she's aboard the Sunny. I mean, this chapter even stresses the fact that we're missing a crew member, because the headline says Luffy and his 9 commanders. And we know we need another one. We need 10 to be able to face Blackbeard's crew. I mean, the only possible other option would be Vivi, but Vivi's not really a combatant, right? Like, she's a politician, she's a diplomat. Whereas Carrot is part of a warrior race, right? Like, these guys trained since they were little. Granted, she got her butt kicked, but I feel even that by itself should be enough of a reason for her to want some redemption, to get some closure, to actually defeat somebody. Also, look at the cover for volume 88 of the manga. Only the Straw Hat members are the ones colored in, including Carrot. And you want to know who's featured in the spine of the same volume? Let's take a look. Oh sh! I like how Usopp appears to be staring at the barrel in awe, and we all know that Usopp can see through things. It seems to me like Chopper and Usopp were busy playing soldiers or something, because they have like helmets on. And it looks like Usopp is like holding a revolver or some kind of a pistol. Now, I was of the idea that Izo would inherit or pass down his pistols to Usopp as sort of a reward for saving Kinemon and Kiku. But then Izo died off screen, so nobody knows what happened with that. So we got brand new bounties for all of the Straw Hats here, and I find it really intentional that if you look at the panel where Sanji is running towards Robin, he looks like his bounty poster, right? With the heart shapes and all that stuff. But then, if you look at the panel where he's jumping in the air, if you look below Sanji, you'll see that his wanted poster has reverted back to looking like the way Duval used to look. So the old picture has gone back into circulation, apparently. And speaking of gags, Chopper's bounty continues to be 1, even though it increased to 1K. Now here's the thing. With the exception of Chopper at the top, all of the Straw Hats in that page have gotten the exact same number increase or boost to their bounties. So Nami, Brook, Frankie, and Usopp, all of their bounties have gone up by the exact same amount of 300 million berries. Nami's bounty used to be 66 mil. You add 300 mil to that, you get the total that she has now. Same thing with Brook. He used to be worth 83 mil. Frankie used to be worth 94 mil. And then Usopp used to be worth 200 million. So if you add 300 million to all of those, you get the bounties in this chapter. Now, I'm pretty sure that the whole Frankie not having a bounty picture this time is setting up like a future plot point. It reminded me of the Only Alive thing with Sanji, Post-Dressrosa and how that led to Whole Cake Island, essentially. So I definitely think that this is a plot point that Oda's setting up, and I think it's going to be addressed probably in the next arc. The sunny is made out of atom wood, and so maybe somebody like looks at the poster and recognizes the atom wood, and maybe we get to like finally find out where the atom tree is. Another idea, and this is a little bit more crazy, is that maybe eventually Franky ends up fusing his body with the body of the ship, because his dream is to build the ship of dreams, right? Like the ship that can just circumnavigate the world, that can get through any obstacle. And there's a little bit of a reference to that in this chapter, right? When he's really proud of like, well, like, you know, the Sunny didn't really get damaged or anything. So maybe he eventually ends up fusing himself with the ship, and that's how he accomplishes his dream. And the thing that gave me this idea in the first place was an SBS where Oda drew Franky in an alternate timeline, in the darkest timeline. And so basically Oda said that, you know, if that were the case, if Franky's life were to go the wrong route, he would turn himself into a battleship and he would go around destroying ships, essentially. So the opposite of that, or like the good timeline would be, I guess, for him to turn himself into a ship and just, you know, fulfill his dream.
Now, in this case, Usopp's bounty aligns with one of Luffy's previous bounties, which is 500 million. And so this goes back to a point in the story where Usopp lied about Luffy's first bounty actually also being his own, which actually ended up turning out to be true, because Luffy's first bounty, he was worth 30 million, and then Usopp's first bounty ended up being for the exact same amount. And so the 500 million in this case is the amount that Luffy got after he defeated Doflamingo, post-Dressrosa. I like how Robin's bounty finally makes sense, because she's only one of 2 people in the world that we know of who can read the poneglyphs, who can decipher them. Now you can tell from the panel there with Chopper that she just doesn't care, but her bounty shot up by 800 million, because she was worth 130 mil. Given where she's from and given what she can do, I feel like Robin should have been worth 1 billion a while ago. But regardless, it's nice to see the bounty catching up. It also reminds me of how Rob Lucci and the government were constantly saying throughout the raid, capture Nico Robin, we gotta get Robin. Have you captured Nico Robin yet? I also find it interesting that if you cut, pun intended, Zoro's bounty near the middle, you kind of get the same number twice. Like if you cut it in half, you get 2 equal parts. It's not exactly in half, but you get what I'm saying.
I'm actually kind of confused now about Zoro's bounty, because in the official translation, it says that his bounty is 1.111 billion. And so if I take that number and multiply it by 1 billion, I get this number right here. All the other translations I read, including the official Spanish translation, have the number at the bottom. So which is it? Is it the one at the top or the one at the bottom? I mean, either way, it's still higher than Sanji's bounty and Jinbei's bounty. But yeah, I think it's important to clarify this, because bounties are a serious point of contention.
And the whole thing about Zoro arguing with Sanji about placement in the crew kind of takes me back to Sabori Archipelago as well, because Zoro was giving Sanji a hard time about arriving 7th at the archipelago to reunite post-time skip, and he was number 1, so he was like bragging about that. So it's kind of like the same dynamic.
So I found it interesting that Sanji's number, which is, I mean, if you write out 1032, you spell it out Sen Sanjuni in Japanese. So Sen Sanjuni kind of sounds like Sanji. It's because Oda sometimes likes to hide puns in the bounty amounts. Now the whole thing about Sanji being number 4 is interesting, because both Zoro and Sanji have at some point been number 4 in terms of highest bounty within the crew. So this is not the first time that Sanji has been number 4 bounty-wise. Post Enies Lobby, Sanji also had the 4th highest bounty in the crew. So the order was Luffy at number 1 with 300 million, then Zoro number 2 with 120 million, and after Zoro was Robin with 80 million, and then after Robin was Sanji with 77 million. But then after Whole Cake Island, Sanji gets a boost, and his bounty is worth 330 million, whereas Zoro at that time was worth 320 million. But then before the raid starts, Jinbei joins the crew, and his bounty is worth 438 million. So in that case, if you keep those numbers in mind, it would go Luffy first, then Jinbei, then Sanji, then Zoro. So not too long ago, Zoro was also in that number 4 spot. But I guess it kind of depends whether or not you consider Jinbei joining the crew. Like, did he actually join the crew before the raid? Or are we still waiting for that Kanpai moment, you know, aboard the Sunny?
with Jinbei and Carrot. Regardless, it's not like any of these Straw Hat bounties are final, right? So I fully expect Sanji to surpass Jinbei at some point in the story, bounty-wise. Now, one of the things that I did notice, and I think it's probably like the only downside to this chapter, because overall I thought it was pretty good, but I did notice this chapter did make me aware of something. And I don't know if it's because it's been so long since we've had the crew interacting with each other, like aboard the Sunny, just like this. But it just seems to me like Jinbei doesn't really have much of a personality. Like if you look at the reactions to each of the bounties, all the other Straw Hats bring some type of energy to the table. But when it comes to Jinbei, his energy is neutral. At least when it comes to this chapter, but I don't think that this is new. I think that's kind of how he is as well. So he does fade a little bit into the background in this chapter. Because you can say like, well, Robin doesn't really care about her bounty either. Like she's, you know, feeding Chopper some cotton candy. But Robin has that whole like, like smile, I'm gonna kill you thing going on, you know? She also has that whole dark humor, like out of nowhere dark humor thing going on. So you can tell that even though she's smiling and stuff, there's something else going on behind the scenes. Anyway, I also kind of wonder how much of Jinbei's bounty increase has to do with the fact that he defeated an ex-government agent. Which reminds me, we never got to see whose face. And then the fact that Luffy is trapped inside of a cage throughout the entire chapter could also be a throwback to the Buggy arc, because Buggy is featured heavily in this chapter as well. Well, and then like Buggy and Luffy are both in similar situations in this chapter, where despite both of them holding the title of Yonko, both of them look ridiculous in this chapter, right? We then cut to Empty Bluffs Island to get a full explanation on the formation of the Cross Guild. And we get one of the best looking spreads that we've gotten in a while, with Crocodile grabbing Buggy by the hair, and then Mihawk holding Yoru at his throat. I like how Mihawk's like, yeah, my swordsmanship doesn't care about your devil fruit power, Buggy. I could kill you right now if I wanted to, using Haki. And Buggy's body is just lying on the floor headless there. Apparently Mr. Three Galdino immediately reverted back to his Baroque work days, so he is now working under Crocodile. And what makes it worse for Buggy is that his entire crew is essentially thinking about doing the exact same thing. And Das Bones is in the corner over there listening to all of this, thinking like, man, these circus people ain't loyal. Flashback to the Nightmare Before Christmas, where Crocodile invites Mihawk to partner up, baboons peeking through the window, and it is revealed to us via Crocodile that Mihawk was once known as the Marine Hunter. And I saw a comment on Reddit pointing out that that's actually the opposite title that was given to Zoro, because Zoro is Pirate Hunter. So it's a really good intentional contrast to begin setting up the final duel between Zoro and Mihawk. I also read some speculation about how it could have been Mihawk, the pirate who actually cut Z's arm, you know, from Film Z, except that the movie actually says that the person or the pirate who cut Z's arm and killed his recruits was actually a devil fruit user. Now the official translation kind of makes Mihawk look like he's being forced out of his home, because he says like, the Navy has this island surrounded at the moment. I need to pick up and move base, bothersome as it might be. So there's like a sense of like, I gotta get out of here. But in the other translations, he's more of like, might as well just, you know, get out of here. Like it's too much of a hassle to deal with all this stuff all the time. So it's a lot more like calm and just like, whatever. Like I'm gonna get out of here, I just don't know when. And so this kind of goes along too with him wanting to have like a peaceful, quiet life. We get the continuation of this scene of Buggy trying to make a run for it, but then one of his men, who appears to be wearing half of King's face, says that the ships are already being taken care of. And so now we can see Crocodile's sand being coated with armament hockey, a la Doflamingo / Green Bull. I kind of like how this implies that there must have been some post-Marineford arrangement between Buggy and Crocodile, where Crocodile was like the bank, because Buggy went to Crocodile for an upstart loan. So by the end of that conversation, Buggy was like, thank you for investing in Buggy's delivery service. I'll pay you back in no time. And then he ended up running the business into the ground. I feel like we all have a Buggy in our family, right? We all know someone or have an uncle who has gone bankrupt, and then when the lenders show up, they're like,
we're sorry, you have reached a number that has been disconnected.
The flyer that was distributed turned out to be a fan commission for Buggy the Clown, so that really didn't sit well with Crocodile. Recently, I've been talking a lot about how Shanks shows up in the story to sort of save the people that are going to be important in the future, that are going to shape the new era. And yet in this chapter, we find out that Mihawk essentially ends up saving Buggy's life. We go to Marine headquarters and Brand New is announcing the new bounties, which the Buggy Yonko title and the Buggy Yonko bounty doesn't make any sense. Let's just be honest, right? That makes no sense. The only reason I'm able to increase my suspension of disbelief for this is because Buggy reminds me of my uncle who is currently in prison. So that's 3,189,000,000 for the clown. And so again, the suspension of disbelief has to kick in at some point or another, because just pre-time skip, the Marines placed Buggy. They put Buggy in level 1 of Impel Down. Pretty sure that Buggy has to be the biggest bounty increase, the biggest bounty jump that we've ever gotten in the series, because he was worth 15 million before this. Again, sometimes Oda likes to hide puns in the bounty numbers, and so for Crocodile's bounty of 1,965,000,000, I actually found that there's a movie that came out in 1965 called Crocodile River. It's a Romeo and Juliet style Thai movie. It's about the forbidden love between two students who live on opposite sides of the river from each other, and the river is full of crocodiles. Also, if you spell out 1965 in Japanese, it's spelled like this. So if you look at the middle, right, it says kroku, so it has the word croc in it. And I also found a similar pattern in Mihawk's bounty of 3,590,000,000. So if you spell out 3,590 in Japanese, it's like this. So it's Sansen Gohyaku Kyuju. So the hyok in the middle sounds a little bit like hawk, right? Sansen Gohyaku Kyuju. But the main thing that this chapter explicitly confirms is something that I said in my review for chapter 1056, which is that if Mihawk wanted to, he would be a Yonko. Without even having a crew, without even having territories to his name, Mihawk's bounty is already higher than Buggy's, who holds the title of Yonko. So to me, in this new phase, Mihawk is the new unofficial Yonko. He's a Yonko in everything but the title. Mihawk's situation is similar to like a Whitebeard situation, where the only reason Whitebeard didn't become king of the pirates, the only reason Whitebeard did not get the One Piece is because he had no interest in it. And this whole Mihawk revelation also aligns perfectly with Zoro's growth. That's another reason why I was never on board with the Zoro kills Kaido theories, because if you look at Zoro's growth, Zoro's goal is to defeat Mihawk. And so now it's revealed in the story without a shadow of a doubt that Mihawk is Yonko level. So what happened with Zoro versus Kaido is that it was perfect training. You know, it's a perfect training opportunity for Zoro to get to that level, Yonko level. And by the way, this also kind of confirms that in the past, Ryuma was Yonko level as well, right? Because the only reason people didn't mess with Wano in the past was because of Ryuma. So in a sense, you can say that in the past, just like with Kaido, Wano had its own Yonko to keep people away, to keep people out. And this is further supported by the fact that in chapter 1052, the villagers are collecting some food, and they say that Luffy, Joy Boy, who by the way, the new Yonko, Luffy, right, is only comparable in their eyes to the god of the blade, meaning Ryuma. So Ryuma was Yonko level, Mihawk is Yonko level, and so with that understanding, we can go ahead and say that creating a black blade is a Yonko level feat. Because as of right now, there are only 2 black blades that we know of in the entire story, and both of them happen to belong to Yonko level characters. Now there are 2 very subtle hints hidden in this chapter that kind of support a very prominent, very popular theory about Crocodile. If you don't know the theory, it basically started off from this scene right here in Impel Down, where Ivankov immediately recognizes Crocodile. So Luffy and the gang are arguing whether to free Crocodile or not, and Ivankov says, don't worry, go ahead and free him because I know his weakness. Plus, if he doesn't behave, I can just reveal his past to everybody right here. And Crocodile says, don't you dare. You know, he gets really upset about that. So the theory about that is that Crocodile used to be a woman, and that's what Ivankov knows about him. And in this chapter, again, there are 2 very subtle hints, okay? The first one is that in one of the first translations that came out for this chapter, in the scene where Buggy is essentially begging Crocodile, right? Buggy calls Crocodile Kroko-chan. And so we know that in Japanese, chan as a suffix is a suffix that is used to refer to women. And then in his conversation on the phone with Mihawk, Crocodile says something to the effect of like, you and I don't trust easily, you know, like we don't trust anyone. So think about that. Like, why would Crocodile tell that to Mihawk? And why would Buggy call Crocodile Kroko-chan, right? Well, another reason for this theory, the reason why this theory has gained traction in addition to the whole conversation with Ivankov, is that during Roger's execution, we get to see like different reaction shots in the crowd, and Crocodile is the only one whose face we don't get to see. We only get to see the back of his head. Now guess who else was also in the crowd during Roger's execution? Buggy and Mihawk. So if Crocodile used to be a woman back then, both of them would know. Plus, it also aligns with what Ivankov says about how Ivankov met Crocodile back when he was a rookie. Anyway, on a similar note, we go to Kamabaka Queendom, and we see that the Revolutionary Army commanders are assembled. They've reunited post-Reverie. And there's like 1 or 2 people that I don't recognize at the table, one of whom is a person that appears to have black wings. Now, Dragon has a line in this chapter that also kind of confirms something that I talked about in a previous review, which is that the revolutionaries sympathize with the Nefertari family, because the Nefertari family was the only family out of the founding families, out of the 20 founding families that founded the world government, that decided not to stay in Marijoa. They decided to live with the rest of the people. They wanted to sort of distance themselves from the world government by living in another place. So the Nefertari family was not okay with whatever the world government ended up doing to gain power during the Void Century. And so given that the Revolutionary Army's goal is to take down the government, right, it makes sense why they would sort of sympathize with Alabasta, with the Nefertari. And so I feel like this heavily implies that Dragon, just like Toki, must have some deep ties to the events that happened during the Void Century, or to people that were alive back then. Now, using Dragon's argument in this chapter, let's say that he finds out via Kuma that it was actually Imu or one of the Gorosei who ended up killing Cobra. What is Dragon gonna do? Like, is he going to try to kill Imu? I also find it interesting that Kuma is readily available to follow Dragon's orders. But then again, Karasu did say that even if they freed Kuma, like, he still would not return to his former self. Speaking of that, it seems like Green Bull and Fujitora didn't know what to do with the revolutionaries, because, like, the revolutionaries were successful because their objective was to get Kuma out of Marijoa, and they did. And it also seemed as if that was Bonnie's objective as well. So where is she? So back in Sphinx Island, Marco said that Shanks had Whitebeard and Ace buried nearby. So I'm wondering if Sabo is there waiting for Luffy or the Straw Hats to get there at some point. And then maybe Bonnie and Vivi are waiting there as well. Now the chapter actually ends with the Marines listening in on the call that Sabo makes. And so I remember Akainu a couple of chapters back saying, like, I'm going to start hunting down people as well. And so the official translation, the Marines say that they're going to record the call and they're also going to be tracing the signal. So they're going to know where Sabo is. So I wouldn't be surprised if Akainu ends up sending some admirals to hunt Sabo down. Now I want to go back to something that Brand New mentions in this chapter. Actually, 2 things. First thing is that he says that the Navy Hunters, or the Cross Guild, already has funding from many criminal groups. And so in my review for chapter 1054, I kind of mentioned that in one of the final panels, in the big spread where we see Sabo's poster, like Flame Emperor Sabo's poster on a wall, you look below that and you see a bunch of banners with different symbols. And one of the symbols that you see on the banners, I think it's like twice, is the Shimotsuki logo, the Shimotsuki symbol. It turns out that there's another symbol in that very same page, and the symbol is that of a star, right? And the star resembles that of the logo, the symbol for the Frankie family. Now, I don't know if this has anything to do with like Frankie's bounty poster. I don't know if the government like saw Frankie and they were like, you know, with Luffy, they were like get this face out of here, like don't put the face on the poster or something like that. But it's interesting that Brand New mentions that like these shady organizations or like these criminal organizations are sort of like putting their money into the Cross Guild and sort of like making their move as well. And then the last thing I need to mention here is the comment about Mihawk having greater skill with the sword, even more so than Shanks, which I feel like we knew that. Like, why is this news? I don't, it's like Mihawk is the world's greatest swordsman for a reason. If there was another character out there who had better skill with the sword than Mihawk, then Zoro's goal, Zoro's ambition to defeat Mihawk wouldn't be his ultimate goal. Zoro would be aiming for Shanks. He would want to defeat Shanks if Shanks had greater skill with the sword than Mihawk. Zoro is aiming for Mihawk because he knows this. He knows what Brand New says in this chapter. However, I do think that the biggest takeaway from this chapter is that Mihawk is Yonko level, right? I think it's pretty much there. Like if you read what people are saying, it's pretty obvious that if Mihawk cared about the title, if he had territory, and if he had the crew, he would have the title of Yonko, no problem. So Shanks is Yonko level and Mihawk is Yonko level, right? That's pretty much established here. Now, what would happen if the two of them were to fight? Well, we know that Mihawk has no interest in fighting Shanks ever since Shanks lost his arm. And this lack of interest is repeated again in Marineford, where he leaves the war because he's like, I'm not gonna fight Shanks. I agreed to fight Whitebeard, but not Red Hair. Now, there's also a scene in Marineford where Luffy is about to attack Mihawk,
and Mihawk is about to slash him, and then Luffy just completely stops his attack and literally buries his arm into the ice, because he actually uses like future sight for a little bit, and he can see that if he were to attack Mihawk, he would cut his arms off. So, and then Mihawk says, oh, so you can be like calm and collected to use future sight. So it kind of heavily implies that Mihawk can, at least knows the principle behind future sight. And thanks to I think it was the information booklet, or the information that has come out from Film Red, is that apparently Shanks can cancel out. He can block other people's observation haki. So if a big part of Mihawk's swordsmanship is based on observation haki, or like a specific branch of observation haki, and Shanks can block that, he can cancel that out, then maybe that sort of evens out the playing field. The point is that to me, they're both Yonko level. Like if Mihawk were to, go up to Shanks to start fighting him, first of all, like Shanks's crew would jump Mihawk, because Shanks has a crew, Mihawk doesn't. So Mihawk would first need to make some Lucky Roo carnitas. But even then, let's say that it's a full-on 1v1, there's nobody around. I honestly just think that it just turns into Kaido versus Big Mom. The two of them can just fight for a very, very long time. They go crazy, they start destroying stuff, but then before a clear winner is decided, both of them are getting drunk. It's just kind of like the dynamic that we've seen with Yonko, that know each other well, and even though they're adversaries, like secretly, they're kind of friendly. And so with that in mind, it's a good reminder to view this as Zoro's goal is to surpass a Yonko, right? Luffy, he was fighting against Kaido in a way, quote unquote, he kind of already did, but not really. I mean, he'll be fighting Blackbeard, I'm assuming, 1v1. That'll be his big test in terms of surpassing a Yonko at full health, I hope. But ultimately, it's important to remember that Luffy's goal is not to surpass Shanks. Luffy's goal is to surpass Roger. So Zoro's goal is to surpass Mihawk. Luffy's goal is to surpass Roger. That's the dynamic that Oda has been sort of establishing ever since the beginning of the series. I thought this was a really good chapter. I honestly haven't felt this way about a chapter in a while. So there's a lot of interesting information, a lot of like sort of Easter eggs in the chapter, which I enjoy. It also kind of like single-handedly restores some integrity to the Yonko system. Good character moments with the crew, like the Bounties, and I like, the whole buggy. That's what I was asking for, like, during the Cross Guild chapter, when we got the announcement with the pamphlet. I actually said in that review that I would have wanted like some insight. I wanted to be a fly in the wall in terms of how that Cross Guild came about and what the discussion was, right? So that's what we got in this chapter, and I really appreciated that. And then of course the whole thing with Sabo there by the end, turning on the heat a little bit more. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care. Apparently, there's still somebody out there trying to impersonate me. But again, I'll repeat what I said before. I only have this channel, this YouTube channel, and the Instagram account that you see below. That's it. Those are my only two accounts. If it's not coming from either of those, it's just not me, okay? Just a brief reminder. Thanks again. Take care. I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.